Hi, Tony DeWitt here, guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. I'm a Missouri appellate attorney, and I'm talking today about one of my appellate cases, which is Cockerham versus American Family. I want to make sure everybody understands this is talking about one case. This is not how American Family acts in every case. Okay, so in order to make this case sound at least a little intelligent, I have to explain a little bit about something called civil procedure. The rules of civil procedure are designed to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake, and there is a rule specific to summary judgment, which is this process whereby we submit issues that are just legal issues to the court to decide, because we don't need a jury to decide legal issues, we need a jury to decide factual issues. So we're going to submit this to the judge to be decided, and what we have to do is we have to support our motion in an appropriate way. Well, American Family, their position was there was no coverage. So that was the only thing they had to address in their motion, was why we didn't have coverage, which is what they did. But then when Mr. Cockerham filed his motion for summary judgment, he said, we've had our contract breached and they've refused to pay on a vexatious basis, meaning they had absolutely no reasonable excuse for not paying us. So he made these claims, and he did his summary judgment motion based on the policy of the language for the breach of contract claim and their refusal to pay for the vexatious refusal claim, which makes sense. It's exactly what you would expect. But one of the things that we have to do when we file a motion for summary judgment is we have to give the court a reason to issue judgment. And a judgment usually means monetary damages. So one of the things that Mr. Cockerham did was he provided an affidavit of an expert, a guy by the name of Thomas Madden, who is an engineer. And he said, this is the amount of money that it's going to take to fix my house. A really important part of this rule is that the defendant has to admit or deny the factual statements, and he has to supply evidence if he denies the statements. Here, all they did was issue an objection, and that has import later on in the case. Now, at that point, the defendant had two options. It could get its own expert and put up its own evidence of what it thought the damages were, or it could move to strike Mr. Cockerham's expert, but it didn't do either of those. All it did was write down an objection. It objected to the testimony of Mr. Cockerham's expert. And there is a rule in Missouri that says if you have an objection, you have to get it ruled on. If you don't get it ruled on, it's considered to have been overruled. So even if it's a meritorious objection, if you fail to call it to the attention of the court and the court doesn't rule on it, you're out of luck. Well, that's what American Family did. They simply let their case go forward on the record as it was. So anytime you file a motion for summary judgment, you get a memorandum of law where you explain why you win. They get a response, and then you get a reply. And in the reply, we said, hey, they didn't challenge our damages, so if we win this, you have to give us the damages that they've admitted. And what happened, of course, was in the trial court, under the first judge that we had in this case, he said, no, I think American Family has this right, and he issued an opinion that said they got summary judgment. So what we did was we appealed that judgment. Now, an appeal is a pretty easy thing to do. In some respects, you file a notice that says we're appealing, and these are the issues we're probably going to hit in the appeal. And then you get the record, which is the compilation of all of the documents that have been filed in the case, And if there's been any testimony taken, you get the transcript from the case, and you file that with the appellate court, and then you write a brief. And the brief basically says that has something called points on appeal. And the points on appeal are, the trial court made this error. This is why it's an error, and this is why it's an error specifically in the context of this case. So, Mr. Cockerham raised 3 points on appeal. The first point was that the trial court erred in giving American Family summary judgment on the breach of contract claim. And he laid out the reasons why we had coverage. And we included that chart that you saw earlier that showed what was covered and what wasn't covered. Then the next thing he did was he said, look, the court erred in not giving us summary judgment, and you should give us summary judgment here at this court. And by the way, these are our damages and they are admitted. And then the third point had to do with vexatious refusal, which we were also contesting. And unfortunately, the court would wind up ruling against us on that issue. But we went to an appellate argument in September of 2018. And in September of 2018, we went to the Eastern District Court of Appeals, a beautiful courthouse in downtown St. Louis. And I got up and I argued that the policy said what the policy said, and if it meant what American Family said, there'd be no reason to have this exception. And the Court of Appeals agreed with me. And basically what they said was, you're right. And what they did was they issued an opinion that said that we should have judgment on our damages claim. And that was a significant win. Well, as I mentioned, the rules of civil procedure give people lots of options and lots of opportunities to correct mistakes. Appellate courts sometimes make mistakes too. So there is this process called a motion for rehearing. And basically what it says is you need to rehear this case. We get to have another oral argument because you overlooked these facts or you overlooked this body of law. And so American Family filed this request for rehearing or motion for rehearing, and they basically re-argued the coverage issue that they lost at the Court of Appeals. And they also said in a sort of vague way, well, the damages aren't clear, but they didn't address it specifically. So that motion was overruled. They filed a motion to transfer it to the Supreme Court. That was overruled. And then they filed an application with the Supreme Court to take the case away from the Court of Appeals and bring it back to the Supreme Court so that that could be heard at the Supreme Court. And that was denied in December of 2018. So as of December of 2018, the issue of whether we won on the coverage and whether we got our damages was decided by all of the courts of Missouri. You couldn't take it to any other court, and there was no constitutional issue, so it couldn't go to the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's where we sat. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about what happened after that. What happened in the trial court on remand. And one of the things that happened in the trial court on remand is we got a different judge. A judge different than the one who made the mistake the first time. And that turned out to be a key thing for us because he was much more careful and much more studious. Now, he gave everybody a fair chance. He wasn't biased one way or the other. He just did his job very, very well, and you'll see that in the next video. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you would, I'd appreciate it if you go over here and click the subscribe icon and tap on the notification bell so you can be notified whenever we do a video here. And if you'll do that, it would really help me because it lets YouTube know that this content is useful for other people. Thank you so much for watching and have a terrific day. I'll catch you on the next video on this case, which should come out in a day or so. Thanks again.